Okay, Ram. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopijana Balaba Girivanadari Gopijana Balaba Girivanadari Jasodanandana Vajajana Ranjana Jasodanandana Vajajana Ranjana Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopijana Balaba Girivanadari Yasodanandana Vajajana Ranjana Jamuna Tiravanatari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopijana Balaba Girivanadari Jasodanandana Vajajana Ranjana Jamuna Tiravanatari Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Krishna Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunda Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunda Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunda Bihari. Jaum Vishnupad Paramahansa Pari Bhajakacharya Siddhishman, His Divine Grace Abhayacharan, Bhakti Vedanta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki, ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Yoga Guru Srila Prabhupada Ki, Ananta Koda Vaishnava Vindiki, Namaskar Srila Haridas Thakur Ki, Prem Shri Gaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Dvaita Gadadhar, Shiva Sadi Gaur Bhakti Vrindaki, Shri Shri Radhakrishna Gopinath Shama Kunda Radhakunda Giri Govardhan Ki, Vrindavan Dham Ki, Mathura Dham Ki, Navadip Dham Ki, Mayapur Dham Ki, Jagannathpuri Dham Ki, Jamuna Maya Ki, Ganga Maya Ki, Tulsi Maharani Ki, Bhakti Devi Ki, Samveda Bhakta Vindiki, Srila Prabhupada Ki, Sri Radha Giridhari Ki, Shri Krishna Sankirtana Jagaki, Gopremanandi. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the divine lotus seat of C.C. Guru and Gauranga. Krishna Swadamo Bhagate Dharmaganadi Visaha Kalandasa Dashamisha Parano Konadodata Narayana Namaskritcha Naram Chaivam Narotama Devim Sarsatim Vyasam Tato Jaya Mudirayat. The Bhagavatam has arisen just after the departure of Lord Krishna, coming to his own abode, along with knowledge, religion, etc. Persons who have lost their vision through the dense darkness of the age of Kali shall get light out of this Purana. Before beginning our study of the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is our very means of conquest, we should first offer respects to the personality of God Narayan, to the Narayan Rishi, the supremest human being, the goddess of living Mother Saraswati, the author Srila Vyasadeva, and my spiritual master, Srila Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So this morning, in honor of Gopastami, this verse I selected because I think it's sweet. And it has a wonderful purport by Srila Prabhupada. And then I happened to be in Mayapur one year when Bhakti Charu Maharaj gave class on Gopastami. And somehow or other I had the wherewithal to take some notes. So I'll share some of his coming from different Goswami literature and okay, sure. It's not What do they call it? Open source. Bhagavatam is open source. All right, so here we go. Let me get the verse. You'll have to excuse me, but my neighbors were quite enthusiastic last night. It was a different set. One set's quieted down, and the new ones have taken up the slack. So we're on, what is it? We're on the third canto, chapter 2, and it's text 29, right? All right. Well, got to get a little help from technology here. But this iPad is almost 20 years old. No, it's on its last legs. We'll get there by Krishna's grace. All right, let's see what happens. Okay. Sa eva go danam lakshmya niketam sita go visham charayan anugan gopan ranad venur ariramat se'eva godana. Okay. Se'eva godanam lakshmya niketam sita gobrisham Charayan gopan ranadvenurariramat Se'eva godanam lakshmya niketam sita gobrisham Charayan gopan ranadvenurariramat Se'eva godanam lakshmya niketam sita gobrisham Charayan gopan ranadvenurariramat Se'eva godanam rasat niketam sita gobrisham Charayan anugan gopam ranadvenurarir Vaishnavis Se'eva godanam lakshman niketam sita gobrisham Charayan anugan gopam ranadvenurariramat Se'eva godanam lakshmya niketan sita gobrisham Charayan anugan gopan ranadvenurariramat Sa He, Lord Krishna. Eva, certainly. Godanam, the treasure of cows. Lakshmya, by opulence. Niketam, reservoir. Sita Gobrisham, beautiful cows and bulls. Charayan, herding, Anugan, the followers, Gopan, cowherds, cowherd boys, Ranat, blowing, Venu, flute, Adiramat, enlivened. We were getting, there's that famous Brijbasi print, and it's Krishna sitting on a rock with a calf next to him. And I forget what was being printed for, but we were getting printed up as a poster for some festival we were having. And when I picked up from the printers, I noticed the caption that the printer had made, his own note to himself to remember what it said. It said, beautiful girl with dog. So they don't know what a cow looks like, and Krishna's beautiful, but they've never seen someone so handsome, so beautiful, so it's a whole, and they're thinking God's an old man with a beard, and so, anyway. So the translation. While herding the very beautiful bulls, the Lord, who was the reservoir of all opulence and fortune, used to blow his flute, and thus he enlivened his faithful followers, the cowherd boys. Also, you say, while herding the very beautiful bulls, the Lord, who was the reservoir of all opulence and fortune, used to blow his flute, and thus he enlivened his faithful followers, the cowherd boys. Purport. As he grew up to 6 and 7 years old, the Lord was given charge of looking after the cows and bulls in the grazing ground. He was the son of a well-to-do landowner who owned hundreds and thousands of cows. And according to Vedic economics, one is considered rich to be a very rich man by the strength of his store of grains and cows. With only these two things, cows and grains, humanity can solve its eating problems. Human society need only sufficient grain and sufficient cows to solve its economic problems. All other things, but these two, are artificial necessities created by man to kill his valuable life at the human level and waste his time in things that are not needed. Lord Krishna, as the teacher of human society, personally showed by his acts that the mercantile community, or Vaishyas, should herd cows and bulls, and thus give protection to the valuable animals. According to Smriti regulation, the cow is the mother and the bull is the father of human being. The cow is the mother because just as one sucks the breast of one's mother, human society takes cow's milk. Similarly, the bull is the father of human society because the father earns for the children just as the bull tills the ground to produce food grains. Human society will kill its spirit of life by killing the father and the mother. It is mentioned herein that the beautiful cows and bulls were various checkered colors, red, black, green, yellow, ash, etc. And because of their colors and healthy smiling features, the atmosphere was enlivening. Over and above all, the Lord used to play his celebrated flute. The sound vibrated by his flute would give his friends such transcendental pleasure that they would forget all the talks of Brahmananda, which are so praised by the impersonalists. These cowherd boys, as well as will be explained by Shukadev Goswami, were living entities who had accumulated heaps of pious acts, and thus were enjoying with the Lord in person, and were hearing his transcendental flute. The Brahma Samhita 5:30 confirms the Lord's blowing his transcendental flute. Venum vanantam aravinda talaya daksham bhavatam samasitam buddha sundarangam kandarpakoti kamaniya visesha sobam govindamari purusham tamaham bhajami. Brahmaji said, quote, I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, who plays on his transcendental flute. His eyes are like lotus petals, he is decorated with peacock plumes, and his bodily color resembles a fresh black cloud, although his bodily features are more beautiful than millions of cupids. These are the special features of the Lord. Om Gana Timarandasya Gyana Gana Salakaya Chakshushan Militan Gena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I appreciated Prabhupada taking a transcendental jab at the impersonalists and Brahmananda. This is the impersonal Brahman feeling oneself at home in Om, and that they like to, this is the apex of, what is it, the sound of one hand clapping. There is some happiness in merging with the Brahman or feeling oneself one with it. There's some sense of eternality and Shanta, a shading of Shanta Rasa. So there is some, what do they say? How you doing? Not so bad. So it's kind of like that, well, I'm not suffering. I'm not, in anxiety. I'm not in fear. But it's not really much of a positive. It's kind of, I'm not suffering. So, okay, that's, I'll take it. But it's explained that the flute, because they want to meditate on that syllable, Om. But what actually happens is Krishna, Tene Brahma Hridaya Adhikavaye, he initiates Brahma with his flute. He hears the sound of Brahma hears Krishna's flute. There's nothing, I don't want to spend too much time on it, but there's nothing in the universe. There's the causal ocean. What is it? The Karana ocean. And there's a lotus, and Lord Brahma sitting on it. But that's it. And he hears the syllable tapa. He practices austerity. And when he's speaking on the Brahma Samhita, he talks about him becomes self-aware. But what actually happens, Prabhupada describes, is that when it's also described in Brahma Samhita, that one actually, he hears Brahma's flute, he hears Krishna's flute. And from that flute, he then chants the Gayatri Mantra. And that Gayatri Mantra, all the different syllables, those bija mantras come out from the Gayatri Mantra. And from all those syllables, all creation unfolds. Just like an opera singer's voice can crack out, with a high C can crack glass, or a sonic boom, So these are gross manifestations of the power of sound. Prabhupada gave another example one time. You make me nervous when you stare at me, but that's another story. He and I have a long-standing relationship from Denver. We get on each other's nerves. Oh, geez. Sufficient to say that Krishna's flute, from that sound, that was what I wanted to say. That if you have a glass of, if you only think about your senses for a moment. I have a glass of milk, but you're only experiencing that through one sense. Okay, if you only experience it through the nose, you know whether it's rancid, you know whether it's flavored, you get an idea if it's gone bad or if it's good, right? If you only experience it through your through your taste, well, you know whether it's sweet. If you only experience it through your touch, you know whether it's cold or hot. But if I say glass of milk, then you get the whole picture. You know that it's white. You know that all of that's. So it's obviously not a perfect example because it's a material example. But by sound vibration, you get a fuller picture. You get the fullest possible picture experiencing through one sense. So in the same way, by sound vibration, actually sound vibration is a subtle form of substance. So by the syllables of Gayatri, infused by Brahma Shakti, everything unfolds. Little by little, it all unfolds from one to another. So they're meditating on the sound Om, which is what would you call it? it's a result of a result of a result of a result of the sound of Krishna's flute. And lo and behold, there's someone playing that flute. We had a group of impersonalist meditators came here one time, and for the Sunday feast, and Jayadvaita Swami was giving class. So, gave a fantastic class, the nice kirtan, the whole thing. And the leader of their group, it was question and answer. And, take some questions. And his burning question was, what is the meaning of the fountain? And Jayadvaita Swami said, the fountain makes a sweet burbling sound that gives pleasure to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, who's standing behind the fountain and has transcendental senses that are pleased by devotional service. The guy had, the idea that there was Krishna, who was a person, supreme person, and we had a loving relationship with him, and that the fountain gave pleasure to him. That wasn't what he was thinking at all. So they're meditating on the sweet sound, the Om vibration, but it is a pauper's penance compared to the actual sound of Krishna's association, hearing Krishna's voice, Krishna's, And it's described here. I mean, just think about it for a moment. And I don't want to offend anybody, but it's the morning class, so it's a relatively in-house until this is, I get a nasty email from somebody that, but the thing is, it's the idea that God is an old man with a beard. It's just rank speculation. Why should the source of all life be wrinkled up with gray hair and a scraggy looking face and not in a very good mood? Why? Is that, it's just speculation. Well, I'm an old man. Oh, well, let's start this way. If someone's a young man and someone's a little older, then they, got some gray hair. If they get old, they're old and wrinkled. So if you go back to the first, my father had a father, my father, you know the analogy. Therefore, the first person, the Adipurusha, Govindam Adipurusha, must be an old man with a beard. Why? Why? It's just rank speculation. It's just, if I hear a bang, anyway, so many examples. So the point is to understand that Krishna, why shouldn't the source of all beauty be beautiful? Of course, one could counter, well, isn't the source, he also the source of all fear? How would you answer this? No? No answer? Krishna is only the source of beautiful, sweet things? Huh? Other than you. Anyone want to say? How to be complete, he has to be both sides, all sides. Yeah. Lord Nrsingadev. And if you wanted to say ugly, of course he's very beautiful, like a moon becomes beautiful with spots. He also comes as Lord Boar. So he's got it all covered. But his supreme form should be the most beautiful, should be all attractive. Even our printer, beautiful girl with dog. I remember there was a McDonald's commercial, Ronald McDonald and all that stuff. And the McDonald's commercial had all the kids going out with Ronald McDonald, like going out to the picnic, and they were picking hamburgers from the hamburger tree. It was a tree, just like it was oranges or, because to actually where it comes from, kids would just be shocked. So that's a little intro, but I wanted to say something else. Well, let's say this. When the Vedic system, we're getting a picture of Vedic tradition and Vedic culture here. And Prabhupada says that the basis of economy is grains and cows. And along with that is gold standard. And I was on a morning walk with Prabhupada in Detroit, and Prabhupada was talking about this. And because as soon as you have paper money, then there's inflation. And there can be, deflation. On the other side, there's all these, and people manipulate the currency, and there's all kinds of problems. And it's only getting worse. If you have gold standard, here's gold. It's a solid, what it says on the dollar bill, what does it say? Federal Reserve note. It used to be that you could go to the bank and ask for your gold. I got $1, give me $1 worth of gold. Now there's just, whatever it is. It's just a piece of paper. And because of that, there's all kinds of speculation. So Prabhupada was making this point, and then the response was, well, but how will you do all these big transactions? I mean, look at the stock market. Billions of dollars in a day are going back and forth. And how would you do all of this if you had gold standard? That's exactly what Prabhupada said. That's the point. That things have to stay small and things have to stay local. So this may look primitive. Prabhupada's famous response, you can't eat nuts and bolts. You've seen those pictures, in Germany, in Weimar Republic or whatever it was, and they're out there with wheelbarrows trying to buy a loaf of bread. And it happens all the time when there's an economic collapse. I'm living in Zimbabwe, or I'm living in wherever it is. I was saying, if Y2K ever hit, you remember Y2K, and it was the end of the world as we know it? Just as a sidelight, our Jamunapati, every year he has a little New Year's party for the householders. So on the Y2K, he said, I'll be right back, I got to get something out of the kitchen. And right when it was the midnight hour, he went out to the switchbox, blew the lights out in his house. On purpose. I thought, oh my God, it happened. It's the end of the world. Then I waited a couple of minutes and he clicked it back on. But the point is that the whole world can, I was thinking if I was in India, Y2K could hit, at least in those days, and 80% of India wouldn't even know. Would make a bit of difference to them. So if you think about it, that if you have a simple, just like it used to be that if you were a farmer, and practically everybody was, you needed your neighbors to put up a barn. Everybody got together, everybody cooked something nice, and you had a festival and you put up a barn. If you were a farmer, you needed your family. Kids were an asset. Instead of a boredom in the womb, kids were an asset. So if you have an economy, now we have the rugged individual. But I guess I'll just jump ahead and say this. And we'll get to Gopastami in a minute. But the ethos behind it of an agrarian culture, or a simple, let me say it like that, a simple culture. If there's Prabhupada used to use eucalyptus twigs for brushing his teeth. Prabhupada was always, when he would go on morning walks, he was always multitasking. He was on the prowl for a nice twig. And, he liked the ones that came from Australia. The devotees used to cut them. They were just the right size and and then you ship them, soak them in water and ship them. And they'd soak for a little while. And Prabhupada, you chew it and you brush your teeth with it. It's actually antiseptic. We use eucalyptus oil on the altar as an antiseptic. So it's actually antiseptic. It massages the gums. And you can say, well, but that's so simple, primitive. I got a toothbrush. I go to CVS and I get myself a toothbrush. We're civilized, right? And you chewing on a twig. Jeez, But think about it. What's behind that toothbrush? It's made in China. You got a whole wave of people in some horrible factory breathing toxic fumes, and shipping it over. Who knows what the carbon footprint of that. So think about what's behind that. Prabhupada gave the example that they used to use kerosene lamp, castor oil lamp. And you think, but this, well, look at the. And if you think about it, what's behind the castor oil lamp? A castor bush is almost impossible to kill. It's a very hardy plant. And when you go down and bathe in the Ganga or whatever your local river is, you have your lota with you to bathe, and you're walking back to your house, you leave your lota full of water. And when you walk past the castor bush, whoosh, anybody able to time that? What the flick of the wrist? I don't know how much time that was. If you got kids love a project. You give them a project, they'll keep them busy for, hey, you want to do something cool? I'll show you how to make castor oil. But you got to work real hard. Otherwise, I'm not going to let you do it. Oh, please let it. You can get them to do it, and they like it. You put it through the press. You pray. It's simple. It didn't cost you anything. You didn't even have to do anything. You just engaged your kids. No. But this is so much easier. I just flick the switch. I flick the switch, and it's a better quality light. I can get 100 watt. I can get 150 watt. You're out here, you're Aborigine with this, kerosene lamp. But what's behind the kerosene lamp? Behind that flick the switch. First off, you got the bill, SDG&E, San Diego Gouge and Extort. How much does that cost you? How many days do you have to work to pay off for that? And then that big fire that almost burned half of San Diego, that was caused by power lines. Shorted out. And you got to have a dam behind it. You got to have a whole, what do you call that? The electrical grid? It's incredible. Okay, now you compare. You have a little better quality light. I accept it's a little bit brighter light, maybe steadier. Your kerosene lamp may flicker sometimes. Okay, compare that to flick your wrist. And what it costs you, because you're paying in taxes, infrastructure, what it costs to maintain that whole power grid and everything, and your monthly bill. So they don't think. So when we look at this, and it may appear to be simplistic, there's beauty in that simplicity. Dharma is often compared to a wheel. And if you want a wheel to turn, what do you have to do? Don't overthink it. You got to push it. Put your shoulder to the wheel, right? So Vedic culture, well, I guess I'll say this first. You've got two different angles of vision. You've got the materialistic view, which is how can I squeeze out as much as I possibly can for myself? And you've got the Vedic culture, which everyone has a sense of duty. I was saying that when we did we're crafting a constitution. It's in its 4th round for ISKCON, but it'll be finished soon. And we did the research. We thought, well, a constitution, it's about the relationships between different groups, like for ISKCON. The temple devotees and the temple president, the temple and a congregation, the GBC and the devotees in general, sannyasis, and how does everybody fit in? And how do they all fit, and what are the relationships? Just like, citizens, and what does the government have to do? And what are your taxes? And so how does it all fit? That's the guiding principle behind a constitution. So we thought, well, let's go to the Manu Samhita. Manu Samhita is the law book. The word man comes from Manu Samhita. It's the law book of humankind. Let's go to Manu Samhita. And it's, believe it or not, the Manu Samhita is on folio at the Library of Congress. There's nothing in the Manu Samhita about rights. People always say, you know, women's rights, men's rights, gay rights. I mean, there's so many gender rights. I mean, where do you want to start? And you got to do. I demand my rights. But there's nothing in it in Manu Samhita. Anyone know? Rabindra Swarup had an epiphany and realized we were looking for the wrong word, looking for rights. What was the word we were not looking for? That was the right word to look for. Duties, exactly so. As soon as we plugged in duties, page after page after page from the Manu Samhita. Here's my point. If you want to make a wheel turn, put your shoulder to the wheel. The Vedic ethos is everybody has a role to serve. And we're talking about the Vaishyas here. They have a duty. The Brahmins have a duty. What is the duty of a Brahmin? To teach, to give instruction, to give guidance. So that's their job. That's their service to society. Kshatriyas have a duty. What is the Kshatriya's duty? Help me out. What's their duty to society? To give protection, to manage, make things go smoothly, law and order. That's their job. What is a Vaishya? We're describing here. What is a Vaishya's duty? Oh, come on. They're feeding us. They're feeding us. So they've got a duty. And what is the Sudra's duty? They provide their labor. So everybody has a role. Everyone has a place where they fit. And they have a sense that we're part of a society. We're working together. We're all serving together to make the wheel of Dharma turn. And if you live in that kind of society, you feel support, you feel protection, you're not alone in the world. You know what the biggest psychological problem in the world is, in the Western world, modern world? Loneliness. People are just, and rightly so, because everybody's trying to, anyway, it's a rough world, but people are lonely. But Vedic society, you have to work together. So I just wanted to point out that although it may appear romantic, it may appear simplistic, it may appear uncivilized, you have to open your eyes and think about, oh, I wanted to pass this. Here's a classic about this, and I don't want to go political, but it's profoundly happened. Pass this around. You know the 99% and the 1%? Anyone know what the, hold on a second. Anyone know what the 99% and the 1%, what that's all about? Who knows? 99% of the world's wealth is held by 1%. 1% of the population controls 99% of the wealth of the world. You've got these people that are worth hundreds of millions or multi-billionaires. I'll give you an example, just because it underpins this point. The Koch brothers, they're not alone. These people, they pay the politicians. They pay the IRA, you know, what is it, the NRA. They pay the rifle guys. The only way you get elected, you have to make a ton of money. To get a ton of money, you got to please people. And they just funnel millions of dollars into, one political party and the other political party, and they do their bidding. Here's a classic example. My son sent me this. The Koch brothers funded millions of dollars, like $500 million they gave to this initiative. And they spread it out to different congressmen and senators. And what it did was it cut the budget for the NIH, the National Institutes of Health, and their funding against pandemics. This is before the COVID. Research guys are out there saying, hey, you know, we're on the edge of, you know, something's going to happen, some bacteria, some virus is going to get loose, and we got to research it. And the Koch brothers, because they had to balance the budget, this is when Prabhupada talks about there's Asuras at the helm of things. And you think about how vicious this actually is, and how important the Krishna consciousness movement is to pull back the wool from people's eyes. You've got this 1% that is everybody else. This is the first generation. What time is it? Whoa. This is the first generation that will have a lower standard of life than the previous generation. Here's a real mind blower. This is the first generation that is going to have a shorter lifespan than the previous generation. The American dream, as Deva Mritamasa said, you know what the American dream is called, the American dream? Because you have to be asleep to believe it. It used to be that everybody was, each generation, you know, had a more, you got your own house, then you could have a pension, you could retire at 65, you could do so, you know, everybody's living a little bit longer. That's gone. That's over. It's finished. You've got people living at home, they're 35 years old because they can't afford to buy a house and get married. That's common. People living with their parents, turning their garage into a house and getting married at 40 and living in their parents' garage. I mean, it's people renting for their entire life. The most intelligent thing you can do if you're a household is figure out how to buy a house. Pay a mortgage, don't pay a rent. But the point is that people are just, so the Koch brothers, and what did, because you got to, Hare Krishna, because they got to balance the budget. Yeah, come on in, don't worry. You can have darshan and they'll get you a little prasadam. To cut the budget, to balance the budget, so that they could get a higher tax return, new tax bracket, have to pay less in taxes. A lot of these guys don't pay anything in taxes. Well, they had to balance the budget. You know what they did? They cut it out of the NIH, out of the National Institute of Health, and they cut it on pandemic research. So when we got hit with COVID, they got to crank everything up again because they'd stopped all the research. Smallpox, typhoid, bubonic plague is about to come at us. I mean, I don't want to scare you guys, but it's like this close. They've got people in New York City or big main cities that are getting it, and they go into the hospital, you know, because they collapse. They jack them full of antibiotic. They don't stay for the whole round. They get out on the street again. They're alcoholics or not in order or whatever it is. They stop taking their meds. They stop going to the hospital. And it's breeding. They're like incubators. It's breeding. It's getting stronger and stronger and stronger and stronger. And one of these is just going to pop out one day, and all of a sudden we're going to hit with something else, just like COVID. And they cut the research money so that they could cut their taxes and pay a little bit less in taxes. Now, if you don't tell me that's not asuric, and they're running the show. So when we read about Vedic culture and Dharma and gold standard and living, you know, producing your own food locally, it means something. It is not a romantic vision for gentlemen farmers. It's the cornerstone for human culture and gentility. And not being alone and having a meaningful life. That you're doing good for others. Your life, people's lives, they know their lives don't mean anything. What is the difference? If I can make my rear end, I can make it to Walmart and back without getting mugged, and Granny's cutting the pills in half. I mean, I don't mean dystopian, but to get to the end of the month, that's not a society. That's not a culture. What is that? So the Vedic view of a rural society doesn't mean you don't have towns, doesn't mean you don't, Prabhupada said a Vedic town is no bigger than 50,000 people. That's the maximum size. But there were cities, big cities like that. Anyway, we're off the track. I wanted to read, we're not completely off the track. I wanted to catch the ethos behind Vedic culture. You read about Mexico City when Cortez, was it Cortez? Yeah, conquered the Aztecs. If you read about Mexico City, it was beautiful. You read from the Spanish conquistadors when they first went in there. It was clean. It was beautiful. They'd never seen. I mean, they're doing everything in chamber pots and dumping it out on the street in medieval Europe. I was amazed. Sewage systems. In the Vedic Karnataka, the king of Mysore, he had free education. He had street lighting. They had a sewer system. Fatehpur Sikri by Akbar had air conditioning. They brought down ice from the Himalayas in big carts covered with straw. You still do it in different countries. You go to Jamaica, they got ice, guys selling ice blocks. They built tanks on top of the roof. They filled the tanks with water. They threw in ice, and they put flowers, fragrant flowers, rose petals, jasmine. And by gravity feed, because when you go to Fatehpur Sikri, which is Akbar's city, you'll see in the rooms there's these look like little nozzles. They're a little lotus shape. And he would just pull a lever, and by gravity feed, that iced water would come down through piping and would come through the little nozzles. And it'd be a mist, a light, fragrant, cold mist. So it's not like they didn't know what was going on. They just didn't have a huge, complicated system that comes and bites them in their rear end. So I wanted to read a few things about Gopastami just for fun. So here's a picture. You can, ladies can take it first. But this is Radharani dressed as a cowherd. And just understand the importance of presenting Bhagavatam and the Vedic we have to understand its importance, and then we'll be inspired to distribute it. It is the only solution. Because everything they're doing now just complicates the issue. That's all it does. It's like in quicksand, and the more you struggle, the faster you just sink. You got to be on solid ground. Okay, so these are some quotes from Bhagavatam and the Nectar of Devotion and Chaitanya Charitamrita. On the day Lord Krishna became a qualified, on this day, Gopastami, Lord Krishna became a qualified cowherd. Before this day, he was the keeper of the calves. That's from Krishna book. Thus Sri Krishna, along with his elder brother Balaram, passed the childhood age known as Kumara and stepped into the age known as Poganda. From the 6th to the 10th year, so that's that stage. At that time, all the cowherd men conferred and agreed to give the boys who had passed their 5th year charge of the cows in the pasturing ground. Given charge of the cows, Krishna and Balaram traversed Vrindavan, purifying the land with their lotus footprints. This is also from the Bhagavatam. Sukadev Goswami said, when Lord Balaram and Lord Krishna attained the age of Poganda, 6 to 10, while living in Vrindavan, the cowherd men allowed them to take up the task of tending the cows. Engaged thus in the company of their friends, the two boys rendered the land of Vrindavan most auspicious by imprinting it with their transcendental footprints. In purport, Prabhupada says, Lord Krishna wanted to encourage his coward friends who had swallowed Aghasura and then stolen by Brahma. Therefore, whatever. Therefore, they decided to bring into the palm tree forest, go into the palm tree forest called Talavan, where there were many delicious ripe fruits. Senior men of Vrindavan, headed by Nanda Maharaj, decided to promote Krishna and the task of herding cows. So that you've read. With great affection, Nanda Maharaj had previously considered Krishna too small and immature to take care of the full-grown cows and bulls. It is stated in the Padma Purana, the 8th lunar day of the bright forenight of the month of Kartik is known by authorities as Gopastami. From that day, Lord Vasudeva served as a cowherd where he previously had tended the calves. Okay, here we go. This is what I was looking for. The word Padai indicates that Lord Krishna blessed the earth by walking on her surface with his lotus feet. The Lord wore no shoes or footgear, but walked barefoot in the forest, giving great anxiety to the girls of Vrindavan who feared that his soft lotus feet would be injured. It's interesting to note, one of the things that's unique about Vrindavan, and you hear it throughout the Bhagavatam, is about Krishna's footprints. It's the only place that he doesn't wear shoes. Even Lord Ram in the forest had shoes made out of leaves or bark or this or that. So it's the only pastime place that you actually have Krishna's lotus feet in the dust. Mother Yasoda wanted to make Krishna shoes, but what did Krishna say? The ultimate egalitarian? He said the cows are barefoot. You got to make cows shoes for all the cows. So there's more of this, but we can end there, because I want to read something in particular. Where is it? Okay, here's how it happened. This is the day that Krishna starts herding the cows. Krishna bowed down before the cows to confirming how important the cow was to human society. So before he took up the job, he and all the cowherd boys bowed down to all the cows. Nanda Maharaj gave all the different inhabitants of Vrindavan, gave different gifts to Krishna and the boys when they started. Nanda Maharaj gave him a little stick for herding the cows, but it was encrusted with all kinds of jewels. Mother Yasoda is always in anxiety about Krishna. Now he's going out to the forest and into the fields to protect him. Mother Yasoda told him, you have to keep Balaram in front, you have to Sudama in behind you, and the rest of the cowherd boys on your two sides, so you're always protected. So I guess we can end there because of the time. But on this, because it was such a festival, I mean, all the devas came down as disguised as cowherd men. They gave Krishna an umbrella, they gave him a stick, they gave him a flute, they gave him, Varuna gives him a rope, everyone gets him all, he gets his gear ready to go out because it's his first day out herding. And it was such a nice festival that the gopis wanted to go, but they said, no, you're girls, you can't go. This is for the boys. Little boys, little girls, no. You're just a girl, you can't go. So did Radharani accept that? This is the day, supposed to be the day, but it doesn't look like it. Tonight. So tonight, tune in, because Radharani will be disguised as a cowherd boy. Okay, thank you very much, Hare Krishna.